which comes from international human rights law, has been shaped over decades by sort of human rights experts, but who themselves have been deeply informed by social movements and people's movements, including the movements of farmers and food sovereignty activists. And it essentially means that all of us have the right to food that is, or that there's an obligation on states to ensure that food is accessible both physically and economically. So economically meaning that nobody should have to make a choice between having healthful food on their plate and keeping the heat on, or paying their electricity bill. Physically goes to the geographic issues and also broader issues about what is near you. Food should be adequate, and not just adequate like it's okay, but adequate as in it's safe, it's nutritious, and it's culturally appropriate. There have been decades of so-called US food aid, of dumping food waste and overproduction of food commodities into countries in the global south as a form of enhancing rights or food security, which really has worked to undermine the sovereignty of food systems within. Food also should be available, meaning available to purchase, but there are peasant movements around the world have really radicalized the framework to imbue within it an idea of distributive justice. So it's not just the food, but availability of land, of water, seeds, and other resources that are required to produce that food becomes important. And then food should also be produced sustainably so that we can ensure healthful food today and for generations to come. And what brings all of this together is the idea of agency and dignity, and increasingly the idea of sovereignty, right? That we get to choose what those food systems look like instead of the corporations that Ashanti was mentioning choosing that system for us, or instead of the US, as it's done, choosing those systems for the rest of the world. I'll conclude by saying that a lot of this came really full circle to me in the last couple of years, where I had the occasion to really engage with and write about and learn from the farmers' protests in India. Did anybody hear about the farmers' protests in India? So here you have a protest that was a year-long movement of non-violent direct action and resistance, where farmers from Punjab, Haryana, and the other breadbaskets of the country occupied the outskirts of the capital of New Delhi, demanding a repeal of 3 controversial farm laws that would have that they feared would have led to a corporate takeover of the countryside and undermined the minimum protections that they had under this incredibly industrialized agricultural model space. There's so much to learn from movements, whether it's in the fields of Punjab or outside Delhi, or community organizers that are organizing right here in Syracuse and all over the country to assert a different way of being, using the language of rights. But I'd be remiss not to deeply acknowledge what Curtis was also saying about how that language has also been used to assert a kind of a way of growing food, a way of thinking about who the right to food is for. We hear a lot about the need to feed the world and to boost agricultural production. To do so, that boosting of production comes at the expense of indigenous communities worldwide whose lands are being grabbed really to create food commodities, to feed livestock, to grow meat, and to feed growing demands for not just for meat, but for populations all over whose consumption habits are competing with the basic subsistence needs of farmers and communities all over the world. So I'll end with just saying that we need to be really intentional and thoughtful, and I do believe that there is power in thinking thoughtfully and carefully and deliberately about rights as a way of bringing back sovereignty, dignity, and agency, but also being careful not to allow the human part of human rights to take us away from the powerful reminder that we are here as caretakers, and that assertion of that supremacy has also come at a great cost. So my thanks once again for that invitation to share.